Hello students, welcome back again. Today we are going to complete our rest of the topics of Unit 1. So let's start without wasting time. So the topic is conduct of audit. Students, at this stage, the audit process, the auditor conducts the audit work through his assistants, controls and coordinates their work through supervision. Before beginning the work, he should obtain a list of books maintained in the office, name of the specimen, name and the specimen, and signature of the keeper of such books, the audited final accounts of the last audited audit and also the audit reports, the name of the officer who are in charge of important activities or department of the organization along with their duties, powers, responsibilities, including their specimen signature, the name of person whom he can approach for clarification of doubts, a copy of the partnership agreement in the case of firms, the memorandum of association, articles of association, and a copy of other important agreements and contracts in case of companies. The process of conducting audit includes the following, that is collection of evidence, audit control, documentation and coordination. So just listen carefully about the process. We are going to study in details of the process of auditing. That is, number one is collection of evidence. Students, evidence means a type of proof. So in the course of audit, the auditors must gather audit evidences and test them so that the opinion about the final statement of concern can be based on evidences. While gathering evidences, the auditors need to be determine the relevance of evidence to examine the assertion of the management and how much evidence is to be obtained. In order to collect appropriate and sufficient evidence, the auditor perform compliance and substantive procedure in big organizations. Transactions are large and may be repetitive. If these transactions occur systematically within the internal control system of the organization, then it would not necessarily be verify all the transactions. A sample study of transactions would be sufficient. Compliance test and designed to obtain assurance that the internal control system generate reliable evidences. An auditor carries out compliances procedure by observing the control system, eliciting response to his inquiry from the clients, etc. Substantive procedure have been designed to obtain audit evidences as to completeness, accuracy, and validity of data produced by the accounting system. The evidence is obtained through the following methods, that is inspection, observation, inquiry and confirmation, computation and analytical review. Inspection refers to an examination of record, documents or tangible assets, while observation relates to taking part in the process as a witness. For example, the auditor may witness the stock taking process to check the system. An inquiry involves obtaining information by putting forward questions. Computation consists of doing arithmetical exercise like totaling, balancing, etc. An analytical review consists of analysis of financial information, for example, calculation of critical ratios, comparisons of true figures, etc. Next one is examination. An auditor may adopt in-depth auditing or test checking. Auditing in-depth, Taylor and Perry defines in-depth auditing as it implies the examination of system applied with a business entailing the tracing of certain transactions from the origin of their conclusion, investigating at each stage of records created and appropriate authorization. Under this method, the auditor examines a few transactions in details, that is, from the origin of the transactions to the conclusion. Thus, certain transactions are traced through various stages from the beginning to their end. The object is to examine the effectiveness of the internal check and the internal control. Next one is test check. As per Professor May, test and test checking means to select and examine the representative sample from large number of similar items. Students, in case of a big organization where the number of transactions is very large, it won't be possible for the auditor to check all the transactions. In such situations, an auditor may select a few transactions at a random to check. Such a check is called a test check. The method minimizes the audit work, but it does not in any way reduce his responsibility. So, in this case, responsibility will not get reduced if later on it is found that few errors or frauds have remained undetected. He would be held liable for negligence. Therefore, it is necessary that the auditor is careful while applying test checks. So, the precautions to be adopted while applying the test check is: entries of every type descriptions should be checked. A large number of entries of the first and the last month of the audit period should be checked. The test check should be arranged in such a way that every accounting clerk's work is checked. Certain transactions or books should be checked completely. For example, cash books, stock values, wages sheets, etc. This is so since the chances of fraud are very high in these cases. So, the auditor must change test checking entries and books at each audit. And the advantage of test checking are: it saves times of the auditor, and clients get report at the earliest. It reduces the cost of audit. An experienced and intelligent auditor can rather invest his time over relevant transactions rather than on irrelevant ones. Thus, it increases the effectiveness of the audit. So, it is clear that the experienced and intelligent auditor can rather invest his time on relevant transactions rather than on irrelevant transactions. Okay, so a few disadvantages of testing are also there. Number one is all errors and frauds may not get detected. There is no best way of deciding about the sample transactions that are to be checked or to determine the size of the sample. An auditor learns it from his experience. It differs from organization to organization. So, it is not required in the case of small organization where the number of transactions is less. It does not reduces the responsibility of the auditor. And now next one is audit notebook. An audit notebook is maintained by auditing assistant. It is systematic record of the queries made by the assistant and the replies received. It may be in the form of register or may be a file of a loose sheets. Contents of audit notebook are technical details of the business of the client, queries of which explanation and information have to be demanded, any matter which has to be discussed with the senior or with the auditor, totals or balances of certain books of accounts, bank reconciliation statements, that is BRS, points that are to be included in the audit report, frauds and errors in the books during the course of audit, important provisions in the article of association or memorandum of association or partnership deed affecting the accounts and audit, and accounting methods followed by the client, the particulars of missing vouchers, the duplicates and duplicates of which have to be obtained. And the advantages of audit notebook is that the important information relating to the queries and their replies is preserved. It shows that the auditor was not negligent in his duty, since the details of audit work done, like totals of some accounts and balances of accounts, fraud details, etc., are noted in the audit notebook. The absence of a check will not affect continuity of audit work. It helps the auditor in the preparation of audit report. Now let us see disadvantages of audit notebook. That is, the entries in the audit notebook should be clear, concise, and complete, or else its purpose will be defeated. Further, an improperly maintained audit notebook may be taken as negligent or careless audit work. Now, audit working papers. Audit working papers. Now, audit working paper. Audit working paper constitute all documents prepared or obtained and retained by the auditor during the course of audit and conclusions. Audit working paper contains essential facts about accounts so that the auditor may not have to go over the accounts for his clients again in case he wants to refer to them later. Example of audit working paper is audit program, working trial balance, schedule of debtors and creditors, details of investment, fixed asset, etc. Correspondence between auditor and bank, debtors, creditors, etc. Certificate recording stock valuation, letters of confirmation, photocopies of documents, abstracts from the minute book, etc. So, objective of audit work paper is to support the preservation of audit report, preservation or preparation of audit report, to provide evidence in case of any suit against the auditor to negligence, to aid the auditor in conducting and supervising the audit, to enable the auditor to point out to the client or the weakness of the internal control system, the inefficiency of accountancy system. The working paper helps the auditor to plan the audit for the succeeding year. So, essentials of a good working paper is, in order to enjoy the advantages of audit working paper, the following qualities are essential. So, in order to have full utility, the working paper should be complete. That is, it should contain all essential information. It should be arranged in the systematic way so as to help locate easily a particular fact out of the paper. The facts laid down in the working paper should be clear. The working paper should be of uniform size so that the handling of paper is easy. Each paper should contain some blank space so that an auditor can note down any point related to the content of the paper. Students, the paper used should be good quality so that it does not tear off easily. Ownership of audit working paper. The ownership of working paper belongs to the auditor. However, he may make copies of it and give it to the client if he wants. The auditor's right to working paper is, however, limited by the principle of confidentiality, which prohibits the auditor from disclosing the information to other without the management consent, except when required by law. Retention of paper. The auditor working paper can be retained by the auditor as long as he feels it would be useful in the audit work of the client. He may retain it for 10 years after submission of audit report. Next one is audit control. An auditor plan an auditor an auditor's good plan has to be complemented by a good audit control. An auditor exercises control over his assistant and over the working performed by others. The control over audit assistants is exercised with the following aims. Audit work performed by the assistant should be as per the program, to provide needed training and guidance to the assistants in carrying out of the work, To update the audit program in light of the practically of the program. Control is exercised by asking them to meet the auditor at periodic intervals. Generally, weekly reporting is prevalent, wherein assistant maintain a diary of work performed by them, and then the diaries are looked by the auditor. Also, an auditor makes surprise visit to the client office to obtain first hand information about the actual state of audit. Many time an auditor has to rely on the work performed by the expert in the work or in the other fields to accomplish the work of audit. For example, he might need the report of the engineer to determine the life of a fixed assets for the purpose of examining the amount of depreciation. Sometimes he has depend upon the opinion of an advocate in matter relating to law of land, etc. While accepting their work, he must make sure that the person has necessary competence and is not in any way related management, so that his opinion is so subjective. The auditor must verify the information. The next one is coordinating the work of other auditors. In case of a joint audit, branch audit, and internal audit, the auditor has to rely on the work performed by the auditors. In case of the joint audit, the auditors have to plan division of work among them. In case of branch audit, the statutory auditor has to rely on the expertise of the branch auditor. The statutory auditor has the right to visit the branch, make enquiries, and have access to record of the branch where the entity has internal audit conducted by the employee of the organization. The auditor must then evaluate the efficiency of the internal audit. He cannot rely on the internal audit report without being responsible for the said task. Then the next one is documentation. Documentation involves reducing in writing the audit manner and their proper upkeep. It includes maintenance of audit notes, working papers, and keeping classified files. The audit document is an evidence of the audit practices and procedure followed by the auditor, and form the basis of for the information or for the formation of audit opinion. And the last one is audit report. An audit report is a writing opinion of an auditor concerning an entity financial statement. The report is prepared in a standard form as mandated by generally accepted accounting standards, that is GAAP. Generally accepted accounting standards requires certain variations in the report depending upon the situation of the audit work that the auditors engaged in.